Hi everyone, it's Dr. Ramani and welcome back to this YouTube channel on narcissism, narcissistic relationships, healing from narcissistic relationships. And we're going to go back to that series on personality, but instead of talking about their personality, we're talking about yours. And today, talking about one of my most personal faves, agreeableness. Now, we have been talking about, again, your personality for a change in this series. And today, we are going to take on a personality style called agreeableness. Now, remember, just to briefly, briefly remind you, this series is about understanding how your personality may put you at risk for these relationships, for getting into them, for getting stuck, and the types of challenges that you may experience when one of these relationships ends or you decide to disengage from the relationship. Now, as much as I own up to my introversion, and I do, when it comes to personality styles, agreeableness is my forever favorite. Heaven love the agreeable folks. Agreeable people are cooperative, empathic, humble, and helpful. They tend to be selfless and play by the rules. They tend to avoid conflict and strive for collaborative solutions to problems. And that's sort of, again, that's when that healthy level, moderate to moderate, low, high levels of agreeableness, right? At the right level, that sweet spot of agreeableness. These are the good, respectful, compassionate, kind, cooperative folks among us. Now, if agreeableness gets too high, it can be tricky because there's a risk of being almost interpersonally naive, easily taken advantage of. These high agreeable people exhaust themselves trying to please other people and may not even get recognized in work or in life because they're just too humble. Now, at the low level of agreeableness, we could call this disagreeableness or antagonism. And guess whose personality lives there? Yep, the counterweight to agreeableness is antagonism. And antagonism is the defining trait of narcissism. So the absence of agreeableness, basically disagreeableness, is a person who does not work well with others, takes advantage of others, lacks empathy, is arrogant, oppositional, selfish, and entitled. But let's get back to agreeableness, because that's what this video is about. Because agreeableness is a very important vulnerability to understand. It's unfortunate that something so good can actually be so bad for you when it comes to narcissistic relationships. Now, Sandra Brown's research suggests that antagonistic people who are narcissistic and psychopathic, that these are people who actually target agreeable people. And that research finding makes sense. The agreeable folks are an easy ride for the narcissistic and psychopathic folks. Agreeable folks are forgiving. They give lots of supply. They expect little reciprocity. They don't expect anything back. They're willing to give in. They're willing to capitulate. It's a narcissistic person's damn dream. And as a result, for a lot of agreeable folks, red flags may get missed, rationalizations, excuses, and justifications made, benefits of the doubt issued. They'll try to see the glass as half full, and you know the rest of that story. I would estimate that a large proportion of people who show up for therapy or help for narcissistic abuse are agreeable. These are folks who are so kind and compassionate and sweet and mean no harm and are caught up in something abusive and atrocious. And because of that sort of bedrock of that agreeable style, may even have trouble seeing and making sense of how bad this other person's behavior is. If you were when you were a child, your agreeableness, it was tough because a narcissistic parent can run roughshod over a child like this, and the child is eternally forgiving and full of excuses. These may be children who become helper, fixer, or peacekeeper children, just trying to make everything right, not complaining, making excuses, and even showing up quite cheerful. As you can imagine, agreeableness can also really keep a person not only drawn into a narcissistic relationship, but also keep them stuck in any kind of narcissistic relationship. The empathy, humility, belief in other people, and the selflessness can all mean that even above and beyond the trauma bond is an intrinsic willingness to make excuses and justify and see the other person's point of view, no matter how badly that other person's behaving. The informal designation that people use of the empath is sort of a layperson's word for a person high in this quality of agreeableness. And as a result, agreeable people can get stuck for lifetimes in toxic relationships. Because it is your personality, it's not that amenable to change. And remarkably, despite the toxic mess that a relationship like this can be, agreeable people may even just remain agreeable and just keep blaming themselves and making excuses. It's painful and it's heartbreaking because an agreeable person in a narcissistic relationship can spend a lifetime blaming themselves for everything that went wrong in the relationship and always trying to meet the narcissistic person 90% of the way. So, what about when a relationship ends? The agreeable person may be prone to hoovering, to being willing to make allowances for the behavior and give second chances, right? And to subsequently get burned again. It can also be difficult for agreeable folks who skew towards seeing the good in people because the repeated fails of these relationships can also sort of puncture the worldview of an agreeable person, which can result in its own form of existential sadness. The agreeable person may keep trying and trying, but through therapy may learn to set somewhat better boundaries and also learn about the dynamics of narcissism. I gotta say, it's really, really difficult for an agreeable person to engage from an existing relationship, especially if they perceive the other person as needing them. For example, a family relationship. I've certainly seen it happen, but it comes at tremendous psychological cost for agreeable people for whom cutting off someone who they feel needs them is very hard. The high agreeable people are the people who struggle the most and may also be the ones who are the most exploited, manipulated, and harmed by these relationships. I have to say that a large proportion of my practice with narcissistically abusive clients has been with agreeable clients. Good, sweet, flexible, empathic, kind people who intellectually get it, but who hurt in their hearts. And even after they address, we do the work on their primary narcissistic relationships, like parents or partners or spouses or longtime friendships or intense workplace relationships, they will find that they do repeat the cycle. Personality is a strong driver, and it's very hard for us to shift or change. Gotta say, my self-disclosure here is that next to introversion, my agreeableness is my next highest score. In fact, they're almost the same. And I gotta say, an agreeable introvert is a funny little person. My score would suggest that I'm empathic and kind and nice, but I don't like a crowd, and that definitely tracks. My agreeableness has also gotten me into trouble. And when you look at my personality, because you can top me off with a little bit of a neuroticism chaser, well, that's all my self-doubt and self-devaluation, which when it's coupled with my empathy, that agreeableness, it was like blood on the water for the narcissistic shark. I got to tell you, I adore agreeable people. I seek them out. I favor them. I seek them out as friends. But the harder reality, at least for me, is that my agreeableness has gotten me into enough trouble that I actually kind of keep to myself more than I ever have. It happens to a lot of survivors. In a way, we feel like if I get myself out there again, it's almost harder to do this again, so I'm not. The world needs more agreeable people desperately. So to all my agreeable friends and viewers, big hug to you, and watch your back, your heart, and your soul. Thanks again.